The biggest complaint against me with the trans issue is that I'm hurting people. But notice I can flip this right back on the trans activists. I can say, trans activists, you're cruel people. You're hurting people. You are putting kids at risk. You're taking kids who don't know who they are, who are confused, who can't consent. Oftentimes, you're taking just one or two doctors and one parent's consent and making potentially lifelong decisions for them at a very young age where their prefrontal cortex is yet to be fully developed.
I got on testosterone when I was 15 years old. And the thing that I think is absolutely wild is that I went to one appointment before I was given my prescription. One. You might be thinking, oh, well, they probably asked you a ton of questions. Nope. They barely asked me anything. I basically walked in there and was like, I'm trans. And they were like, okay.
How dare you hurt children like you are? You are terrible people.
A lot of the girls were changing in their sports bras and stuff. A lot of us stated, like, can you please get out? We're changing, we don't feel comfortable with you in here. After a little while, the student did leave, but it took a little bit for the student to leave, and a lot of us were not comfortable with that situation, and it's happened before, and so we want it just to be changed, really.
In a locker room, it's made specifically for girls, and so having a male with a penis in there, it just felt wrong.
Bodies matter. Calling girls bigots because they don't want to use the toilet in a stall next to a boy or get undressed next to a boy is cruel and wrong. It is embarrassing enough for a girl to change a pad knowing all the other girls can hear the crinkle of the packaging. But telling her that she must be okay doing it in the presence of boys because their preferred pronouns are she, her? How evil can you be?
But what was detrimental to this is the fact that this man is and has been using the women's restroom and locker room. Firstly, the question we must address is why are we affirming the mental confusion of this boy and putting the safety of women in jeopardy by allowing mentally confused men to use the women's spaces? Of course, any male who claims he is a woman will accept it. But what about the women? What about the true girls like myself who are female down to our DNA? Why don't we ever get a say in whether or not we are comfortable with this? The truth is, we aren't.
And it's people like me who are the true compassionate ones. You trans activists, you're terrible, cruel people. Supporting biological men, as I call it, men, from going into women's spaces, like prisons, sports, risking rape, and hurting the effort and progress and feelings of real women.
In addition to being forced to give up our awards and our titles and our opportunities, the NCAA forced me and my female swimmers to share a locker room with Thomas, a 6'4", 22-year-old male equipped with and exposing male genitalia. Let me be clear about this. We were not forewarned we would be sharing a locker room. No one asked for our consent, and we did not give our consent. And I'll set the scene. A swimming locker room is not a place of modesty. You're undressing, you're fully exposed, and we were forced to take off our swimsuit in front of a man who was doing the exact same thing.
When we tried to voice our concerns to the athletic department, we were told that Leah's swimming and being in our locker room was a non-negotiable, and we were offered psychological services to attempt to re-educate us to become comfortable with the idea of undressing in front of a male.
2022, I was severely injured in a high school volleyball game by a transgender athlete on the opposing team. I suffered from a concussion and neck injury that to this day I'm still recovering from.
Why are you so mean and cruel to women, you trans activists? I could use the exact same rhetoric back on you.
I am that 40-year-old detransitioner that you say you'll never be. And I want to say that I also thought when I was your age that I would never ever detransition either, that I 100% knew who I was then, there, and I would always be unfalteringly unchangeable. You know, I really believed that. Truthfully, if gender is a spectrum, why do we have to try to change anything? Why can't you just be you? You have no idea what 20 plus years of HRT will do to your bladder or your endocrine system or your urethra. I do. It's not what you think. It has irreversible side effects and damages.
Taking hormones actually worsened my mental health, but therapists saw that it was because I was stuck in the wrong body. They cleared me for sex reassignment surgery by diagnosing me with gender identity disorder. Immediately after SRS, I was super excited to start a new life. I was happy for a few months while recovering. However, soon I realized that my new part wasn't what doctors promised me. My new vagina started constricting despite rigorous dilation, which resulted in me developing vaginal stenosis. This left me unable to have penetrative sex, which adversely impacted my mental health. I also lost my sex drive, my motivation to achieve anything, and became brain fogged and lethargic.
Because everything that I had been told for the last almost 10 years was not true. And so now I'm stuck, and I have all these feelings about wanting to have a family, wanting to like be in a relationship, wanting to have those experiences that other people have. And I don't even know how to feel that.
There was outrage when Tiffany Scott, a violent trans inmate, wanted to move to a female prison. And criticism too over the case of Isla Bryson, a transgender double rapist temporarily housed in an all-women jail. There's an urgent review, and the movement of trans prisoners is paused in Scotland.
This is Annie Andrews. She was the record holder in women's powerlifting in Canada. The record for a bench press that she held was 275 pounds. Now, Annie Andrews won 8 out of 9 competitions she entered in the women's category over the past 4 years. So now enter Avi Silverberg. He goes to the women's competition and he says, well, hey, even though I look like this, I identify as a woman. And he is allowed to compete in the women's competition. He then goes on to shatter Annie Andrews' record of 275 pounds on the bench press by bench pressing nearly 370 pounds.
Maybe my participation isn't necessarily fair. I mean, you know, there's science, whatever.
That I'm the compassionate one, and you guys are cisphobes, and you're terrible, terrible people.